Graxor stomped around the holding area, his massive scaled body reflecting the harsh lights overhead. He flexed his forearms, each rippling with muscles under shimmering blue-green skin. The champion gladiator of the Varaxian Empire had never lost a fight. Today would be no different. "They send me a human," Graxor bellowed, peering through the force field at the new prisoner. "What joke is this?" John Carter sat quietly on a bench in the opposite cell. Average height, average build, nothing remarkable about him at all. His prison uniform hung loosely on his frame. He seemed almost bored, staring at the floor as if waiting for a bus rather than a death match. "You hear me, soft skin," Graxor taunted, slamming one fist against the barrier. "I will use your bones as toothpicks." John finally looked up, his face calm. He nodded once, then returned to his thoughts. This only enraged Graxor more. 27 champions have died by my hand. You will be 28. The guards arrived. Tall insectoid creatures with chitinous armor and stun buttons. "Enough, Graxor," one chittered. "Save it for the arena." Along the corridor, other alien prisoners watched from their cells. A three-eyed being with tentacles for arms pressed against its barrier. "Human," it whispered as John passed. "I am sorry for your fate. None survived Graxor." John nodded again but said nothing. In the preparation chamber, attendants rubbed oils into Graxor's scales while he continued to boast. "The human will not last 10 seconds against me. I will tear him apart slowly for the Emperor's pleasure." Across the room, John stood alone. His mind drifted back to the diplomatic mission gone wrong. Their ship had entered Varaxian space with peaceful intentions, carrying ambassadors and a small security team. John had been part of that team. The Varaxians had attacked without warning, killing most of the crew. Only a handful of humans survived, now scattered throughout the Empire's prison system. A loud horn blared, and the massive doors at the end of the hall swung open. Light flooded in as the roar of thousands of alien spectators filled the air. "Citizens of the glorious Varaxian Empire," the announcer's voice boomed through hidden speakers. "Today our champion Graxor faces a new species in combat. Behold the human, a creature from a distant world that dared to enter our territory." The crowd roared with approval. Emperor Krax rose from his floating throne high above the arena. 7 feet tall with iridescent scales and elaborate gold armor, he raised 2 of his 4 arms for silence. "My loyal subjects," the Emperor's voice echoed across the arena. "We have conquered many worlds, many species. These humans thought themselves worthy of speaking to us as equals." He laughed, a harsh sound that the crowd mimicked. "Today we show them their place in our galaxy." The crowd erupted again as Graxor stepped into the sunlight, weapons gleaming in each of his 4 hands. He circled the arena, basking in the adoration, before stopping to face the entrance where John would emerge. "Bring out the human," Emperor Krax commanded. John walked out calmly, squinting slightly in the bright light. The crowd fell silent for a moment, then burst into mocking laughter. He looked so small compared to Graxor, so fragile and doomed. In the stands, a small group of humans sat guarded by Varaxian soldiers. They had been brought to witness the humiliation of their kind. Among them, a woman named Lisa Wright watched John with a strange expression, not fear, but anticipation. Graxor threw back his head and laughed, the sound echoing across the arena. "This," he shouted for all to hear, "this is what I fight today. I have crushed space beetles more threatening." The crowd roared with laughter. But John just smiled, a small, knowing smile. The fight was about to begin. The guards rushed John to a small holding room after the Emperor's announcement. He had 1 hour before the fight. 1 hour to prepare for what everyone believed was his death. A hidden camera watched him from the corner. John knew this and acted accordingly, stretching casually as if preparing for a light workout rather than a fight to the death. What the Varaxians didn't know was that John wasn't just any human soldier. 5 years ago, he had volunteered for Program Titan, a classified military enhancement initiative. On paper, John had been discharged after a training accident. In reality, he had become something more. The door slid open, and two guards shoved another human inside. Lisa Wright stumbled but caught herself quickly. Her prison uniform was worn but clean, her blonde hair pulled back tightly. "You have 10 minutes," the guard chittered before closing the door. Lisa glanced at the camera and moved close to John. "They think I'm here to say goodbye," she whispered. "But listen carefully. I've been here 3 months longer than you. I've watched Graxor fight 12 times. John nodded slightly. "Tell me." "He's strongest with his upper right arm. He leads with it, then follows with lower left. The other 2 arms are for balance and defense." Lisa demonstrated the pattern with her hands. "His scales are thickest on his chest and back, but thinner at the joints. And he's slower after he roars. Takes a deep breath that gives you maybe 2 seconds." John absorbed every detail. Weapons. He favors the shock spear and gravity hammer. The spear has a 5-second recharge between electrical discharges. Count it out. The hammer creates a localized gravity field on impact that can crush bones if you're too close. Outside, they heard Graxor continuing to boast to the guards. "After I kill this human, bring me 2 opponents next time. I grow bored with these easy victories." Lisa's eyes darted to the door. "One more thing. The arena has hidden pressure plates that can activate flame jets, but they're marked by slight color differences in the sand. Dark patches. Stay away." "How do you know all this?" John asked quietly. "I was the navigation officer on our ship. I observe things. It's what I do." She straightened up and spoke louder for the benefit of the listening devices. "Goodbye, John. May your gods be with you." The guards returned and took Lisa away. Alone again, John closed his eyes and regulated his breathing. The nanites in his bloodstream responded, optimizing oxygen efficiency and strengthening muscle fibers. Soon, an older Varaxian with elaborate armor entered. He carried a case filled with weapons. "Human," he said with surprising politeness, "I am Weapons Master Drax. Tradition allows you to select 1 weapon for the arena." He opened the case to reveal an array of deadly instruments. "Choose." John examined the options: plasma blades, sonic disruptors, venom whips, and more exotic weapons he couldn't identify. He pointed to the simplest item in the collection. "This," he said, selecting a plain metal staff about 6 feet long. The weapons master's eyes blinked in succession, a sign of confusion. "That is a training tool, not a weapon of glory." "It will do," John replied. Drax shook his head. "Your funeral choice, human." As the weapons master left, John held the staff, testing its weight and balance. It was heavier than earth metals, with perfect balance. He spun it once, muscle memory from thousands of hours of training taking over. In his cell across the hall, Graxor saw this through the force field and laughed again. "The human chooses a stick against my arsenal. This insults me." But if Graxor could have seen the slight smile on John's face, he might have been less confident. Program Titan had specialized in one thing above all others: turning ordinary human soldiers into living weapons. The weapon John needed wasn't in that case. It was already in the arena. The grand arena of Vorax Prime stretched nearly a mile in diameter, a massive bowl carved from a single piece of blue-black stone. 50,000 alien spectators filled the stands, their varied forms creating a living tapestry of colors and shapes. Some floated in anti-gravity bubbles, others perched on specialized seating for their unique anatomies. The arena floor was covered in red sand, not for show, but because it best displayed the different colors of blood that would soon be spilled. In the center stood a raised platform where Emperor Krax and his court watched from ornate thrones. "I bet 20 nutrition credits on Graxor finishing the human in under 2 minutes," a slug-like alien gurgled to its neighbor. "Too generous," replied a furry being with 6 eyes. "I say 30 seconds. The crowd roared as hidden doors slid open on one side of the arena. Grexor emerged, now wearing ceremonial armor that left his muscled arms free. His blue-green scales glistened with oil, and metal implants along his spine glowed with power. In his 4 hands, he carried his signature weapons: a shock spear, a gravity hammer, a serrated blade, and a barbed whip. He raised his weapons overhead, basking in the adoration of the crowd. Turning to the Emperor's box, he dropped to one knee in a formal bow. "Rise, champion," Emperor Krax commanded. "Today you fight for the glory of the Voraxian Empire. Show this human what happens to those who dare think themselves our equals." Graxor turned toward the opposite entrance, where the doors were now sliding open. "With pleasure, my Emperor." John walked in calmly, holding only the metal staff. The arena's bright sunlight made him squint momentarily. The crowd fell silent, then erupted in laughter. He wore no armor, just the simple prison uniform. Beside Graxor's impressive figure, he looked like a child facing a giant. "That's the challenger." A thin, gas-breathing alien wheezed through its respirator. "Why waste arena time with this?" John looked around the massive space, taking note of the sand patterns Lisa had mentioned. Sure enough, darker patches dotted the arena floor. He spotted the small section where human prisoners sat under heavy guard. Lisa was among them, her eyes locked on him. Next to her sat Alan Kelly, the ship's doctor, and several other crew members he recognized. "Beings of the great Voraxian Empire," the announcer's voice boomed. "Today's combat is to the death." The crowd roared approval. Should the impossible occur and the human win, he and one other prisoner of his choosing will be granted freedom. As is our sacred law, when Graxor wins, as is certain, the remaining humans will be sent to the labor colonies as a lesson in humility. Emperor Krax rose again, his ornate armor catching the light. "Humans believe themselves ready to join the galactic community," he announced, his voice amplified across the arena. "Yet they send ships with puny weapons. They offer friendship instead of submission. Today we demonstrate why the Voraxian Empire has ruled this sector for 10,000 years. We are strength. We are power. All others exist to serve us." The crowd stomped and cheered, creating a thunderous rhythm that shook the ground. Graxor circled John slowly, spinning his weapons with practiced flourishes. "I will make this interesting for our Emperor," he called out loudly. "Perhaps I will remove your limbs one by one before I finish you." John remained silent, adjusting his grip on the staff. A massive gong sounded 3 times, silencing the crowd. "Combatants ready," the announcer called. John took a deep breath, focusing on the nanites in his bloodstream, feeling them activate fully for the first time since his capture. His senses sharpened. Time seemed to slow slightly as his neural enhancements engage. "Begin," the announcer shouted. Graxor let out a terrifying roar and charge, all 4 arms wielding death. Graxor charged across the red sand, his 4 arms swinging his weapons in deadly arcs. The shock spear lunged forward first, crackling with blue energy. The crowd roared in anticipation of first blood. But John wasn't there anymore. He sidestepped with surprising speed, pivoting on one foot as the massive alien's momentum carried him past. The crowd's roar faltered into confused murmurs. "Stand still, human," Graxor bellowed, spinning around with his gravity hammer swinging in a wide arc. John ducked beneath it, feeling the distortion in the air as it passed over his head. In the same motion, he swept his staff low, connecting with Graxor's ankles. The blow wasn't hard enough to topple the alien, but it wasn't meant to. John was testing, measuring, calculating. "Lucky dodge," someone shouted from the stands. Graxor attacked again, this time more carefully. His upper right arm thrust the shock spear, while his lower left swung the serrated blade in a complementary motion, exactly as Lisa had described. John deflected the spear with one end of his staff and twisted away from the blade. "Fight back, coward," Graxor taunted, frustration edging into his voice. John remained silent, conserving energy, watching Graxor's movements. The alien's fighting style relied on overwhelming force and reach advantage. Each attack created openings. "What is the human doing?" Emperor Krax asked one of his advisors. "Why does he not attack?" "Perhaps he hopes for a quick death." "Your Magnificence," the advisor suggested. The emperor frowned, unsatisfied with the spectacle. Graxor roared again, and John counted. 1 second. 2 seconds as the alien inhaled deeply after the roar. He struck during that vulnerable moment, stepping inside Graxor's guard and driving the end of his staff into the softer scales where the alien's arm joined his shoulder. The impact made a dull crack. Graxor grunted in pain, his upper left arm momentarily hanging limp. A collective gasp rippled through the arena. First blood had been drawn, not by the champion, but by the human. He hit him. Lisa whispered excitedly to Alan. He found the weak spot. Graxor stared at John with new eyes, rage mixing with the first flickers of concern. "You will pay for that, human," he growled, rolling his injured shoulder. The arm began moving again, but slower. John allowed himself a small smile. He spun the staff and settled into a fighting stance for the first time. In rage, Graxor activated his shock spear's electrical discharge, thrusting it directly at John's chest. John caught the shaft with his staff, redirecting it harmlessly past him. 1 second passed, 2 seconds, 3, 4, 5. The electrical charge faded. John slammed his staff forward while the weapon was inert, catching Graxor in the throat. The alien staggered backward, coughing and gasping. The crowd fell completely silent. "Impossible," the Emperor whispered. Recovering quickly, Graxor swung his gravity hammer in rage. John didn't dodge this time. Instead, he stepped forward, inside the hammer's effective range, and drove his staff upward into Graxor's jaw. Blood, dark purple and thick, splattered across the red sand. "The human can fight," murmured a spectator in disbelief. Graxor wiped his mouth, his yellow eyes narrowing. "So the prey has teeth," he said, lower now for John's ears only. "Good. Breaking you will be satisfying." He attacked with all 4 weapons simultaneously, a whirlwind of deadly metal that no opponent had ever survived. John weaved through the assault, his movements fluid and precise. The nanites in his body were now fully active, processing information faster than normal human reflexes allowed. When he emerged from the flurry of attacks, John had been cut, a shallow gash across his forearm. But Graxor was bleeding from 2 more places, his coordinated assault having left openings that John had exploited. The arena was now completely silent except for the sound of combat. No one was laughing anymore. Graxor's eyes narrowed as purple blood dripped from his wounds. No opponent had ever lasted this long against him, let alone drawn blood 3 times. He threw his head back and let out a bellowing roar that echoed throughout the arena. This time, John didn't wait for the roar to finish. He charged forward, counting on the temporary vulnerability. His staff struck hard against Graxor's knee joint, where the scales were thinnest. The alien champion stumbled but caught himself, swinging his gravity hammer in a wild arc. "He's learning your patterns," Lisa whispered from the stands, though John couldn't hear her. The hammer missed, but created a gravity pulse that pulled John slightly off balance. Graxor seized the advantage, his shock spear lunging with renewed energy. The tip grazed John's shoulder, sending electricity coursing through his body. John gritted his teeth against the pain. The nanites in his system worked quickly to disperse the electrical charge, but for a critical moment, he was slowed. "Now I have you." Graxor pressed forward, his barbed whip lashing out and wrapping around John's staff. With a powerful tug, he yanked the weapon from John's hands. The staff clattered across the arena floor, landing near a dark patch of sand. The crowd roared back to life, sensing the tide had turned. "The Emperor grows bored with your delaying tactics," Graxor taunted, advancing with all 4 weapons at the ready. "Time to finish this game." John found himself backed toward the arena wall, seemingly defenseless. The Varaxian guards at the human section of the stands tightened their grips on their weapons, preparing for the inevitable end. Emperor Krax leaned forward in his throne, anticipating the kill. Graxor lunged with his shock spear in a direct thrust at John's chest, but instead of dodging, John grabbed the shaft just behind the electrified tip. The current surged through him, making his muscles convulse, but he held on. What is he doing? Ellen gasped, watching his friend seemingly commit suicide. With a sudden twist that surprised even Graxor, John used the spear's momentum to swing himself around behind the alien. In one fluid motion, he landed on Graxor's broad back, between the glowing spine implants. The crowd gasped collectively. Before Graxor could react, John pressed his palm against one of the implants. The nanites in his bloodstream surged into his hand, creating microscopic filaments that extended from his fingertips into the alien technology. "Get off me," Graxor roared, trying to reach behind him with his weapons, but his arms couldn't bend far enough to strike John effectively. John closed his eyes for a second, his enhanced brain interfacing with the Varaxian tech. The spine implants were strength enhancers, drawing power from Graxor's own bioelectrical field. John reversed the polarity. Graxor screamed as his own implants suddenly began draining his strength rather than enhancing it. His forearms trembled, weapons growing heavy in his weakening grip. What are you doing to me?" Graxor gasped, dropping to one knee. John leaped off the alien's back, landing gracefully in front of him. He walked calmly to retrieve his staff while Graxor struggled to stand. "Impossible." The Emperor rose from his throne. "No human has this technology." John twirled his staff again, facing the weakened champion. "You assumed humans are weak because we don't flaunt our strength," he said, his first words since entering the arena. "That was your mistake." Graxor managed to rise, swaying slightly. His yellow eyes burned with rage and confusion. "What are you?" The human prisoners were now standing, ignoring the guards' threats. Lisa had tears in her eyes. "He's turning it around," she whispered. "He's actually winning." Graxor gathered his remaining strength for one final desperate attack. He charged forward with a primal scream, all four weapons striking simultaneously from different angles. Time seemed to slow for John as his enhancements reached peak efficiency. He saw every attack coming, calculated trajectories, identified openings. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the human moved like water between the deadly strikes, his staff a blur of motion, deflecting and countering with impossible precision. And then, in one decisive moment, John Carter struck. John's staff struck Graxor in precisely calculated points. First, the nerve cluster at the base of his throat, then the weakened shoulder joint, followed by a sweep that knocked his legs from under him. The champion of the Varaxian Empire crashed to the red sand with a heavy thud. The arena fell completely silent. 50,000 aliens held their breath. Graxor tried to rise, his forearms trembling with effort. Purple blood dripped from his wounds, staining the sand beneath him. His weapons lay scattered around him, dropped in his fall. "How?" he gasped, looking up at John with disbelief. "What are you?" John planted his staff in the sand and stood tall. "I am human," he said simply, his voice carrying across the silent arena. But not just any human. He extended his arm toward the crowd, pulling back his sleeve to reveal his skin. As the nanites concentrated in that area, his skin became temporarily transparent, revealing the microscopic machines flowing through his veins like liquid metal. "Program Titan," he explained, his eyes meeting Graxor's. 300 volunteers. 5 years of development. One goal: create soldiers who could face any threat in the galaxy. The Emperor stood from his throne, pointing a trembling finger. "This is deception. The humans claim to be peaceful explorers." "We are," John replied, turning to face the Emperor. "But peace requires strength. We hope to join the galactic community as equals, not as conquests." He turned back to Graxor, who had managed to get to his knees, reaching for his gravity hammer with one shaking hand. "We studied 100 alien species," John continued, "learned their strengths, adapted our own biology to match them. Your people value power above all else, so I'll speak in terms you understand." John moved with blinding speed, snatching the hammer before Graxor could reach it. With a casual swing, he slammed it into the ground near a dark patch of sand. The gravity pulse triggered the hidden flame trap, sending a column of fire shooting upward. The crowd gasped again. "I knew about your traps," John said. "Your weapons, your weaknesses. While you laughed at me, I was calculating exactly how to defeat you." Graxor lunged forward in desperation, attempting to tackle John. The human sidestepped easily and struck the alien's spine with his staff, not to injure, but to realign the implants John had tampered with. "I'm also restoring your strength," John explained as Graxor felt power returning to his limbs. "I didn't come here to kill you." Graxor slowly got to his feet, his yellow eyes wide with confusion. "You could finish me. Why don't you?" "Because that's the difference between us," John answered. "You fight for glory. I fight only when necessary, and I show mercy when I can." He turned to face the Emperor's box again. "The law states that if I win, I go free, along with one prisoner of my choosing." Emperor Krax had sunk back into his throne, his advisors chattering urgently around him. After a moment, he rose again. "The law is the law," he acknowledged, his voice tight with anger. "You have won the combat fairly. Choose your companion and leave our empire." John looked toward the section where the human prisoners watched with tears in their eyes. "I choose all of them," he said firmly. "That is not the bargain." The Emperor roared. "Then I choose to stay and fight again tomorrow," John replied calmly. "And the next day. How many champions do you have left, Emperor? How many can stand against what humans truly are?" A murmur spread through the crowd. Some aliens were standing now, pointing at John with expressions of awe or fear. Graxor, still bleeding but standing tall again, did something unexpected. He laughed. Not a mocking laugh, but one of genuine respect. "Emperor," the champion called out, "perhaps we should reconsider our approach to these humans." The Emperor's eyes narrowed as he studied John, reassessing everything the Varaxian Empire had assumed about humanity. The Emperor's grand chamber fell silent as John entered. 3 days had passed since the fight in the arena. He walked with confidence across the polished stone floor, still carrying his simple staff. 4 royal guards followed closely, their weapons ready but not aimed directly at him. Emperor Krax sat upon his elevated throne, his 4 arms resting on ornate armrests. His advisors stood nervously to either side. "The human warrior," the Emperor announced, his voice echoing in the vast space. "You have created quite a problem for me." John stopped at the designated spot before the throne and bowed slightly. Enough for respect, but not submission. "Word has spread through the Empire," Krax continued. "The undefeated Graxor, bested by a human. My subjects question my wisdom in dismissing your kind as weak." "Perceptions can change," John replied simply. The large doors behind him opened again. Lysa Wright and the other human prisoners were escorted in by more guards. They looked better now, cleaned up, properly fed, no longer wearing prison garb. "Your companions," the Emperor gestured toward them. "As promised, they will be released. One transport vessel is being prepared for your return to human space." Lisa stepped forward, standing beside John. "Just like that, after months of imprisonment." The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "Would you prefer to stay?" "What my friend means," John interjected, "is that this sudden change is unexpected." From a side entrance, Graxor appeared. He wore ceremonial armor that covered the healing wounds from their battle. He approached and stood to the side, between John and the Emperor. "The champion requested to be here," Emperor Krax explained. "He has something to say." Graxor turned to face John. "Human," he began, his voice softer than in the arena. "You could have killed me. By our laws, by our customs, that would have been your right as victor." He placed one hand over his chest in a formal gesture. "I offer my service to you, as is tradition when a warrior spares a worthy opponent." Murmurs rippled through the advisors. This ancient custom hadn't been invoked in generations. "I appreciate the offer," John replied, "but I believe you serve your people best here." Graxer nodded slowly. "Then I will serve by teaching what I have learned. The humans are not what we thought." The Emperor raised a hand for silence. "This brings me to my proposal." He leaned forward, studying John intensely. "Your display of both strength and mercy has impressed certain factions within my court. Some suggest an alliance might be more beneficial than conquest." Alan Kelly stepped forward from the group of humans. "Our original mission was diplomatic, Your Eminence. We came seeking peaceful relations." "Yes," the Emperor waved dismissively. "But now we negotiate from a position of mutual respect, not assumed superiority." He pointed at John. "Because of this one warrior." "Not just one," John corrected. "There are others like me. But we prefer to be explorers rather than soldiers." The Emperor considered this. 3 days from now, your ship will be ready. You will carry my seal, granting safe passage through Varaxian space, and a formal invitation to your leaders to send proper diplomats." His eyes narrowed again. "Next time, perhaps with more honesty about your capabilities." "A fair request," John agreed. Later, as the humans gathered in their temporary quarters, Lisa placed a hand on John's shoulder. "You know, when they first threw you into the arena, I thought we were all doomed." John smiled. "Sometimes the best way to avoid a war is to win a single decisive battle." Alan shook his head in wonder. "They're actually afraid of us now." "Not afraid," John corrected. "Respectful. There's a difference." Outside their window, the Varaxian capital city glittered with lights as night fell. In the distance, the arena stood dark and empty. Word had already spread to nearby star systems. Humans were not to be underestimated. On the morning of their departure, Graxer met John at the landing pad where their ship waited. "Perhaps one day we will fight again," the alien champion suggested, "but as training partners, not enemies." John extended his hand in the human gesture of friendship. After a moment of hesitation, Graxer took it with one of his 4 hands. "Until then," John said, "remember that strength comes in many forms." As their ship lifted off, carrying the humans home with an unexpected peace treaty, John looked back at the Varaxian world growing smaller below. Sometimes, he thought, you had to show your strength before others would listen to your wisdom. The alien gladiator had laughed at the human until the fight began. Now, an empire was changing because of it.